All right. A question was asked on one of my previous videos about how I was handling a movement state. So let me start game here. This is a remade prototype of what I was working on with, I think it's called Wild Echoes in the video too, but it's basically a Megaman X style movement, or Megaman Zero. And you can see we got a normal run, a dash jump, etc. This video is just going to be going over how I maintain the movement on a dash jump. You can kind of see how I pick up speed if I'm holding the dash button while moving from a normal state. So I'm going to cover that, and this is not going to be all-encompassing because there's too much code to go through that I've not organized well. So let's stop this. At a basic level, I have a global singleton so that I can access things conveniently from anywhere without worrying about it. My entire game runs in a main node, and everything else gets added into various parents. You can look at that structure all you want on your own. So in main, where I store most of this, everything that needs to run each frame anywhere in the code, I have a home rolled template buffer or input buffer. So because this will have two players, I just have a structure here that's duplicated for the two players. We're not going to worry about player 2 right now. We're just going to focus on player 1. And so each frame, I set this buffer based on the player. And there's a better way to do this, but that's not important for this video. Another important bit is that I have another singleton for the character's stats. This just holds everything I might want to adjust so I can find it all in one place, including timings, things like that. This has made it really easy to adjust stuff in one place rather than everywhere. And I'm just showing this so that if the variables show up when we look at our code, you know where that's coming from. The same with my enums. I have enums for different states. My movement is based on a state machine. The state itself has positions of run and change, and these are the various states. Let's move this up because I would rather it be up here. And the attack states don't do yet. So these two enums are going to be very important as we move forward here. Inside my player character, I'm doing the movement in the physics process, and this kind of is just the recipe for what happens for the character each frame. What we're really going to focus on is processing this movement state. So my movement state, like I said, or my states have two positions to be in. A position where it's changing and a position where it's running. This was important for what I'm about to show, but basically I want this position change to happen once, and then we immediately go into a movement state. So let's jump down to 3 point... here's the start state. So if we're jumping or we're changing into the jump state, we go to start movement jumping state. So on the frame that you were running and you've pushed to the jump button, this will run once, and then it will move on to the running state. In this line here, we'll change the state to run so that this only runs once. So when you do that, we add a jump. I'm using a timer to control how long you're in the air for. We'll start updating the vertical velocity. This is mostly so that we actually do the thing we want on the first frame, because we won't run the running state until the next frame. And this is where an important variable I set is air dash speed. So the question that I should have opened with was, how do you maintain your dash speed in the air? I'm not using physics to control the character here. I'm not using a physics engine to control the character. So if you were doing that, it should just be handled for you because it will maintain velocity from your dash. I'm not doing that, so I have to remember that I had the dashing speed going. So we go to our input data, which is from the buffer, and check if we were holding the dash at the moment that we tried to jump. If so, then we just set the variable. This is for a double jump. This is a timing thing. The rest of this mostly doesn't matter. And we're doing coyote time too, so I could cover that if it's wanted in another video. So we've run this. The important thing is that we've checked, or we've set that air dash speed is true because we're holding dash while jumping. So we move to the running state, which would start on, I think it's the next frame. It might run this frame. You can go back and look at the process state. I don't want to cover the state machine in too much depth. So when we're running it, the first thing we need to do is check whether we're changing state. I need the attacks to be separate from state, so that's why this is here. But the next check is, are we going to be changing state? In our current instance, obviously we aren't. We just changed to the jumping state, so we can skip over these and go to the actual running state, where I update the horizontal and vertical movement of the player. Vertical movement is straightforward. It does gravity and wall sliding. That's where this is covered, so you can read through that at your leisure. For horizontal movement, this is where that airspeed comes in. So we're not dashing. We don't need to worry about that. This is for interrupting. If I remember correctly, this is the state we're looking for. So this is if we're holding an input and we don't have a delay. So like when you're attacking, I want to be able to stop the character. I'll show that here just because it might be useful. I'm letting the player move for the first 2 attacks of a chain, but on the third one I want them to stop. So I use a timer for that to interrupt the movement. So as long as that isn't happening and we're trying to move, we'll apply a velocity. I'm using a move towards just to smooth it out a very tiny amount, but this is going to get a smidgen buck wild. So what I'm moving is the x vector of the velocity, and I want to move that toward this big mamma jamma. And I know it's not necessary, but I like to use parentheses to help separate it out. So obviously we want the direction. That's what char H in the input is which direction is the player pushing. And that's between -1 and 1, so that we get left and right. And then I want to choose which speed they're going, which is where air dash speed starts to matter. So if we have that flag set, I want to use the dash speed for horizontal movement, as long as they're not on the floor. If you're just holding that button, for some reason it's set, I don't want you to be able to sprint. So if we're in the air and we have that air dash speed flag set, we just use the dash speed that I've set in the character stats. Otherwise, use the walk speed, and we interpolate over. We're changing that. Oops. We're changing that speed based on. Come on. Oh no. On this lerp speed, delta, and the walk speed, so that it. This part probably isn't necessary, but it tightened things up a little bit. So that's really all that's happening. In summary, when you're doing your movement, at the instance that you're jumping, you need to know whether you were dashing or you were holding dash, and then you set a flag so that you can know to use that speed in the air. And that's also used later for, let's go back to the top, because the effect also happens where I have the dash ghost. So if either we're dashing or we have that flag set, then we get the effect. So that's how you would know whether your speed is on or off. That's pretty much it. I have a complicated state machine that makes this look more complicated than it is, but it really comes down to just making sure you've set this air dash speed. So thank you for your question, and thank you for your time.